Hey, it's Tim Kawakami here, North and South, with my co-host, Los Angeles Times Dylan Hernandez. Extra show today. We're doing an extra one. It's Friday morning. Just the events are driving it, and I think we want to just discuss some of the things that have happened with Shohei Ohtani, Ippei Mizuhara, a big development yesterday, and I want to talk a little about our memories and our thoughts and our reflections on OJ Simpson's death. Not that we were in the middle of anything, but this is just a monumental and incredibly controversial, incredibly dark part of the American sports psyche and memories. Dylan, first, obviously, we're the Otani podcast, proudly so. The federal prosecutors have the press conference today, announced a lot of incredible details. I mean, I couldn't believe how many details they put out there. Essentially, they're just saying this is all Ippei. Here's exactly what we've got on him. I just couldn't believe how conclusive it was in their minds. Maybe it is just a slam dunk thing, and Ohtani was not involved in the gambling at all and had this money stolen from him. But man, I was stunned by the force and the level of the details and everything pointing to it. It was all Mizuhara and not Ohtani. What struck you about that whole process of what happened yesterday?
I guess it's just how fast everything came together too, right? Not only was it detailed. I mean, you're thinking about a government investigation, and you right usually the speed at which large institutions work, you kind of think, okay,
Oh,
well, this is
yeah.
going to take a while for it to happen. What is this, like 3 weeks? I mean,
Amazing,
you know,
incredible,
like that,
incredible.
yeah. I mean, the guy, completely, again, like you said, the detail, just the text messages between Mizuhara and the bookie, the amounts of money. I mean, that to me, I guess, was the mind blowing part of it, right? Was the scale of this thing. The amounts stolen from Otani. In addition to that, like the amount that like Mizuhara gambled. You know,
$170 million. I mean,
yeah,
Jesus
something like that. I mean, it
Christ.
was insane. Yeah. And I guess, it's right. There's like a very interesting detail in there about how, when they checked Otani's phone, there was no record of him ever having logged into his own bank account
Mm.
from that phone. So he never, like, probably was checked his balance, which could kind of explain how this happened, and I think this kind of goes back again to something I probably mentioned earlier here about how, again, the way he's kind of been presented, right? At least like from the time that he was in Japan, about just kind of, he just likes baseball, doesn't really care about anything else. And you're kind of seeing it kind of laid out here, right? And I think, even, when people like lie to people, right? I mean, or steal from people, they find targets, right? I mean, if Mizuhara had, judged Otani to be somebody that's going to be checking his account every week, that's not going to be the guy he's going to steal from. And the fact that, again, that this could happen so easily, again, it kind of brings you back to this thing of like, man, maybe kind of that's all there is there. And I think I brought up the example last time of his walk year last year when he was talking about, hey, I'm not looking ahead to free agency. And I'm kind of thinking, like, there's no way he's not thinking about this. And again, he pitched his way to an injury that might have cost him $100 million, you know? Um, and so I guess, yeah, it's just kind of, again, just the scale of everything. It's hard to kind of wrap your brain around all this. That it really is, I guess, just that simple. What were your thoughts, just kind of reading
Yeah, it's
the
like
details of
if
this?
you wanted it to make it as clear as possible, as perfectly, undeniably, well, everything's deniable, but like this is it. He's Shohei Ohtani was speaking the truth. He did not know about this. We found every level of detail we needed, and here it is in 3 weeks, as fast as possible. That's what it is. Now you might say it was too fast. It was too much. It was like this is your overwhelm, like it's almost like it's to try to prove something beyond the shadow of a doubt within the speed of light. Like you're just like boop, 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 everything is just happening. But sometimes the simplest thing is the truest thing. Occam's razor. Um, like maybe he really didn't know, and maybe he didn't know until that with the second game in Korea when when Ippei told the team and then told Otani, like this is the way it would roll out. I don't think I expected it to happen in a matter of weeks, but there's nothing there that you would go, okay, that's a little bit, other than the speed of it, right? The speed of it is the only, like, Jesus Christ, what did they have the whole thing booked before he even, did a press conference? But if you had to, like, okay, what do we need to see to prove to ourselves, not court of law, but to ourselves, that Ohtani was speaking the truth? These are all the things. If we're going to text from Mizuhara to the bookie, technically, I am guilty. It's just like, it's all there. It feels like, a little too obvious, a little too on the nose, but sometimes on the nose is what is true. So it fits the whole process, just tells you how clunkily they handled it in the get, right? His friggin' people are the ones who put Mizuhara out there to ESPN for him to say that he loaned me the money and he knew, and then had to go back on it and saying, well, he didn't know I stole it. It's just this really, that means Ohtani's handlers did not know about any of this. And like, not even like check with Ohtani, like, hey, we're going to put him out there and he's going to say that you loaned him the money. They didn't even check with Ohtani. But again, that goes to nobody knew, like, except for Ohtani, like the things that he was ignoring, he just was completely ignoring them. It is amazing. And I think this is over essentially for Ohtani. Would you agree with that? Like, this is the federal government, and there's certainly not MLB's investigation is not going to be more thorough than that, right? They're like, okay, good, everybody, we're all clear here, and you understand why, and there are cynical reasons why, but there's also probably logical reasons. What are they going to do? What are they going to find more than Mizuhara saying these things and no record of Mizuhara and Ohtani talking about it? That is one potential thing where you could go raise your eyes. Like, they were together constantly. Ohtani's one guy with him who spoke the language throughout baseball, all these baseball seasons. The guy was betting 19,000 times in like a 4-year, period. And Ohtani had no idea. Like, he never brought it up and he never bet on baseball. Like, those are things I think you can raise. But at this point, I think it's done as far as Ohtani. Maybe the emotional after effect is still going, but from a legal, baseball suspension, all that stuff, I think it's over. Would you agree with that, Dylan?
Yeah. And as I was kind of reading the complaint yesterday, and I was in there when the press conference, it's kind of took me back again when in 2017 when I went to go visit Japan in his last year over there, and I dropped by his high school and I was talking to, his high school coach, and it was right, and the guy tells me at the time, like, yeah, he's going next year. We had this conversation. And he told me, he kind of recounted that conversation that they had about, whether he should go at 23, which is what he wound up doing. And, he had to sign basically as an amateur player then, right? Had he waited 2 more years, he could have come as an unrestricted free agent, signed for like $200 million. And, one of the things I went back and I read the story that I wrote then. And, he said, the coach said, he told Ohtani, dreams are important, but you're in the real world now, and he said this with, right. And I do think it was kind of meant to be kind of this positive thing. Cause in the end, he's like, yeah, but he still told me he wanted to go, that's just like him. But there was a bit of kind of concern in there, and he told me too, this story about how, I guess Ohtani's paychecks from the Nippon Ham Fighters used to be deposited into his parents' bank account. And his mother, Ohtani's mother, was so worried that she was going to raise, right, that her child was going to basically be financially illiterate. So she opened a bank account for him and every month dropped in $1,000. At the end of the year, she checked it. Actually, there was more money in there because, he had accrued some interest, right? And so this all kind of fits in that sense, right? This kind of, and even with that high school coach, I just kind of remember too, right? And you kind of have to remember, I think, kind of the cultural differences too, right? Where, I remember at some point I was explaining to him, right, there was I was talking to him about the Kenta Maeda contract, and where when Maeda signed with the Dodgers, they were concerned about his elbow. He signed for, I believe it was like a $3 million base salary, and he could make up to like 15 or something a year in incentives, right? And kind of from like a Japanese standpoint, it's like, hey, I want to be paid, I'm going to earn my pay basically. Yep. What that ended up happening though was the Dodgers very liberally, would move him into the bullpen, take him right back into the rotation, back into the bullpen. And I kind of had to explain to him, like, in the way it works kind of in our country is that contracts kind of protect players, right? Kenta Maeda is making $20 million. The front office is going to think twice before moving him into the bullpen, because what happens if you do that? The owner is going to ask, hey, I'm paying $20 million a year for this guy. Why is he in the bullpen? And so, you take all that, right? I mean, a culture that I think does kind of look at money as being a little bit gross in a way, right? Not that people don't like money, but you can't right? You can't be as openly, happy about money as you are here. And then you kind of take, even within that population, somebody that's very apathetic to it, as unbelievable as this kind of seemed, because honestly, as the story was kind of unfolding, I was kind of thinking, okay, well, because there were rumors going around that there's a bigger number out there, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well, if that comes out, how do you kind of explain that? That's going to be kind of harder to explain away. But you were talking about, again, a person who lives kind of on the extremities of a fairly extreme culture, and I guess it is possible.
Well, now the number is what, 16 million? It was what, 4.5. Yeah. Now it's 16. It is amazing. It's just the sheer volume of what we're looking at. Just the the idea that this guy was, what is it, 20 times a day on betting on college soccer. I mean, just random, just going through sending texts to the bookie, like after the ESPN and LA Times stories. It's like the dunderheadedness of this to go, to get down millions of dollars and just have, I can pay. I'm really bad at this. The one detail out of the whole thing, you can bring up your own if you got, that I saw that really made me think this exonerates Shohei Ohtani from any gambling part of this, is that the money that Mizuhara won went to a different account.
Yeah.
Like that really, like, why would, if you're a Shohei Ohtani and you're literally, if you're thinking the worst of this and you are he's gambling and putting his name on money being sent to a bookie, why would there be a different account where the winnings go? Like that, that is the single thing out there beyond all else that really makes me think, okay, just knowing the way these guys think, that is proof of a dunderhead who is stealing from somebody and is trying to profit himself in strictly himself. That was amazing to me. That was a detail that I think, maybe it's made up. I don't think it's made up. It's federal. These are federal prosecutors that really clarifies it to me. You got one other than that one?
Well, the $325,000 he spent on baseball cards. I mean, that is just, and then this whole thing too about, and I think we talked about this in some capacity too, just the fact that like Ohtani this whole time thought that CAA, his agency, was looking over this account, right? And it turned out, and again, I still don't get that, even again, I see Major League Baseball teams kind of operating, right? The Dodgers have like a few Japanese employees that they don't seem to listen to a whole ton, and in this case, it sounded like basically CAA had nobody, right? According to this thing, right? Ohtani's agent would occasionally hire somebody, kind of like on a part-time basis to like interpret here and there or whatever. But how they kind of left themselves, right? There was kind of, his agency kind of failed him here too, and again, right? Usually, like, again, in this country, you have a lot of money, right? You have somebody taking care of your money, and then you hire somebody to, right, look over the people that are taking care of your money, and then you hire somebody else to police that guy. And again, I just think kind of the cultural thing, especially from the part of Japan that he's from too, very rural area, where I'm guessing they just never even right? Like his parents, who do seem to kind of be involved in, at least the dad seems to kind of be involved in some of the business stuff he's got going on in Japan. They're just kind of not thinking to this point here, and it's just, it is really kind of unfortunate for him, obviously, that things kind of got to this point. But wow, just the scale of this is just,
it's incredible. It's incredible. It's two guys. There's one guy doing it. It's just one guy doing it. And I mean, if you're the bookie, like going, what? Okay, I guess I assume this is gonna at some point it's going to be exposed. I know when bookies live in different kinds of world. You know Ohtani a little bit. You've asked him about this personally. I know it's unknowable. Do you expect Ohtani to address this, all of it, pretty soon, now that the federal prosecutors have announced all these things?
I'm not sure at this point that he would. I kind of wonder if he would wait until the case is like completely, whether Mizuhara pleads out or if there's a trial or whatever. I kind of wonder if he'll wait. Maybe he'll say something briefly like that. He's glad that it, kind of got to this point. But yeah, I am kind of curious. Again, like kind of the emotional side of this thing, right? And kind of going back. What was it, like a week and a half ago, whenever it was that I approached him in the clubhouse about, hey, you talked the other day, but kind of didn't all add up. And again, the calmness with which he talked, because again, like I don't know, like as a normal person, I would think that the kind of typical reaction would be one of, right, you feel really betrayed, you feel, maybe embarrassed, right? That, that all this money just got taken from you. The fact that right, he's actually started hitting even better since then, I think kind of says a lot again of just where he is, in terms of compartmentalizing things. I do kind of wonder, right, in his kind of private moments, what that's kind of like. And I'm guessing we'll never find out, just because again, just how kind of closed off he is and the way he's managed to kind of separate, his on-field stuff from kind of the off-field stuff. And we're only obviously he only lets us into basically what we see on the field. This is a guy who, keep in mind too, like doesn't even, I don't think that there's anyone who's even seen him like practice, right? Right. The kind of typical baseball offseason stories that we all like writing about, right? We all, we go visit a guy in his home and we follow him around for a day and he's training, and Ohtani has never, from what I understand, like let anybody into anything like that either. He's been just judge me what happens on the field, and so, yeah, I'm guessing we're not going to find out too much about like kind of like his real private thoughts, about this thing. But yeah, it's just an incredible story here.
And this is one little thing that we now know about, because the FBI got involved and because there was this bookie that they were already investigating. What if there's more stuff? I'm not saying more gambling stuff, but who knows where his money's gone? Who knows what's been, if there was no monitoring of this, what about all this other stuff? Again, that's just me throwing it out there. And he's not the only player that we've heard about these sort of things. I don't mean to, make any kind of, wild, I'm just saying that's just one thing we know, because the FBI was already investigating these. And maybe that's the one thing where it's been money's disappeared, or we don't know. But I would tend to guess there's probably some other things, just money, financial, not illegal, just financial, and we'll see what systems he puts in place in order to have this not happen again. Like, he is rich enough, the contract is large enough. We can all kind of like wave our eyes at $16 million. It's amazing. That's a player making that kind of money. But, what if this was somebody making $2 million a year? What if this guy was like, maybe his interpreter would never have been given that credit line, but still it's a lot of money. It's just a ton of money. All right. We'll get more Ohtani. I'm sure we'll keep talking about this. I just, this was fresh in a lot of people's mind. I didn't want to bug you yesterday, Dylan. I'm sure you had things you had to do. You had things you got to do today. Ohtani is constant. It is a universal beat at this point, but we're all fascinated. OJ Simpson dies yesterday. And, I didn't have a lot to say about it. Yes, I don't know in the moment. It's just this incredibly complicated situation. But I just want to ask you, like, what are your thoughts? What hits you when you see OJ dies? What was your experience going through that whole trial, through the white Bronco? Like, where were you during that? Were you in LA growing up at that point?
I was in high school. Yeah. Yep. I remember, I think I saw the verdict in Mr. Shotwell's class. I think it might have been during brunch. But yeah, it's kind of what I remember about then is, I remember my dad, right, who, grew up in this country, obviously. He came here, I think, in like 1960-ish, and so he's kind of seen kind of American history kind of unfold before him. And I remember what he said at the time was kind of like, after the verdict got announced, he said, well, that's going to be it for affirmative action. And sure enough, a year or two later, and I do kind of think that this was kind of the point of origin for kind of like modern, right, white grievance politics, right? This was kind of like the one example of like something, right? They, were literally, the race card got played, right?
Yeah.
And kind of these things that, and obviously what's kind of unfortunate is that this is really just like a rich guy getting off, right?
Yep.
And it's
Yeah,
kind of
that
been,
was the
yeah, and that's the thing, right? But it kind of got applied, like it got blanketed all over, right? And like people started complaining about, like, well, I didn't get a promotion here because of this and that, and blah 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 blah, whatever, But yeah, and to be honest, like I still think like it's still kind of a raw thing, right? I mean, I think that one of the reasons, I think like a lot of people didn't want to talk about this too much yesterday because in a way it's still kind of unfolding right now, right? And it's I mean, in some ways it's gotten even worse, right? I mean, I think that again,
a lot of
ways,
right?
Yeah. I mean, now we're really here, right? And so from that standpoint, it was just everything about it is just just unfortunate.
Two deaths, obviously. Yeah, I mean, 2 deaths and a lot of frayed emotions and, the polarization of America, which we talk a million times. But I'll just say when I was in LA at the LA Times when the murders happened and through the trial, and I just remember like after the next day after the murders, it was, reported that OJ Simpson's ex-wife had been murdered and someone else. And people, was just constantly talked about. And I did think like, I know OJ Simpson. I'm a sports writer. I didn't cover him or anything like that, but grew up in San Francisco. These are things I identified. City College San Francisco, went to USC. It's very, very California life. But I didn't trade it to the 49ers at the end of his career. I kind of, I knew how big he was, but it's like he's been retired for a lot of years, been on TV, but like this is a huge thing that this stops the world. Like, and that was before as the beginnings of suspicions, like that first day. I remember I'm listening to the Jim Rome radio show in LA, and someone called and said, "Oh yeah, there's a history of him beating Nicole." Like, and it was just like, whoa! Like it was, you could even tell Rome was like, wait a minute, like where are we going here? And that just became this echoing thing in LA. People in LA talking about their relationship. It just was, to me, again, to try to specify this, just like this big sports figures are always famous. They're just going to be always famous. It is just the thing that continues. And that's what kind of hit me. I knew OJ Simpson was big. I knew it was in commercials. I knew it was in some movies. I didn't feel that. And then it just became obviously the conversation for years, and continue. And I'd say, how long can this go? Well, it kept going, and he's charged with murder and the trial, and just the dichotomy of what different pieces of the society we're thinking about. And my theory, I'll throw it out there, not that it means anything. It's just amazing that that the former great athlete who's charged with murder happens to be the most famous one. Like it's always the most famous one. Shohei Ohtani and the gambling thing. It couldn't be a minor player. It had to be Shohei Ohtani. Player to contract the HIV virus. It couldn't be anybody less than Magic Johnson, former great player to die in a helicopter. It had to be Kobe Bryant. I don't know why, and maybe it's just because of the sheer volume of their fame makes us project larger things and makes it like the only thing that ever had to happen to this person. But I'm just astounded at that these things are kind of the locus of them are always to the biggest. Heavyweight champion accused of rape had to be Mike Tyson. Like it's just, I am always like, just it never seems to be anything but the biggest athlete or former athlete. Again, there's something, I think that the magnetic pull of fame probably happens in other categories too, but the one we're looking at is sports, the one we talk about is sports, and it had to be OJ. I don't know. It happened to be OJ Simpson. And I always remember the white Bronco chase. I was covering a Dodger game, and we were not watching the Dodger game. We were watching the chase. And I know the NBA Finals game was going on. It's just like this, your head was exploding with what's going on here. Like we go down to the, I don't even remember the Dodgers won or lost the game. We go down to the manager's office. That might have been Lasorda. I can't even remember now. And like that's all we were talking about. We weren't talking about the game. The writers and the manager were just talking about, and the players. I think afterwards was like, what went on here? Just a stoppage of time. It's like this moment where things. This was it. This was before the chase, and then there's the world after the chase. It just felt like that. You knew it was happening as your head was spinning. No grand conclusion of that other than OJ Simpson was last a good football player like 50 years ago. And it's still important. It's still something that signifies something. His death is talked about internationally. That is something that speaks to America. It speaks to sports society. It speaks to fame. But I am struck by that. And I wasn't going to get you on to talk about this, Dylan. I just kind of wanted to let it sink. And I thought today, well, let's talk about it a little bit. So you and I, let's kind of expand a little bit. And also, North and South is a California podcast, and he's certainly a California person. But the range of emotion, the range of reaction is just, I can't believe it happens to the biggest people are always the ones involved in the biggest stories. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it's dumb of me to point that out, but I just keep seeing it over and over. And I don't know. There's got to be some explanation for this, and I don't have it. But
I kind of wonder if it's just because those types of people like live on, there's such extremes, right?
Yeah.
And even again, I mean, let's just take Ohtani here. His apathy for money is so extreme, right?
Yeah.
That like we can't even kind of conceive, and I think the last time again I was on, when we were talking about this, and I kind of was talking about the way he kind of reacted, and I said, I wouldn't read too much into this just because we don't think the way he does, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we kind of will place ourselves in the position of these athletes and say like, well, if I was there, right? You look at like OJ Simpson, it's like he's got so much to lose, right? Why would you do this? It's like, yeah, but he doesn't think like us, right? And because he doesn't think like us is probably why he got to where he got to in the first place, and so I do kind of wonder if it's some of that. What I was kind of, I don't know, what I thought about too was they were showing the 30 for 30 one time. I was covering this might have been 2008, 9, somewhere in there. And I just remember there was a Latin American player, young kid, and he's looking up at watching the TV, and he's seeing the Bronco chase scene, and he's like, what's going on? Like he thought it was happening now.
Yeah.
And it did give me this thing like, oh, like I had to explain OJ Simpson to him, I remember after the the Yu Darvish Gurriel incident at the World Series in 17. The next day, a bunch of Japanese reporters came to me one by one, asking me, why is this a big deal? Because they didn't understand, it's just like, well, our eyes are kind of slanted. Like, what's the big deal here?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like racial stuff, I think, right? I do think that this is like a very much like, it's a very American story, in that. And, I think it's been, the previous century, obviously it was kind of the big issue in America. And I think it still remains unresolved, and hopefully we kind of get to a point where, right, nobody understands it in a way where you kind of have to kind of explain the context.
I mean, that's,
here's the thing. It's such a, right. The thing is so pervasive right now that we don't even have to explain to anybody like what's really kind of going on here. We all kind of like just feel it, and so hopefully we get to a point where these things have to kind of be explained because we're past that, but
not past it. It almost makes me feel like to get past it, you have to go through the very extreme, because you do have the groups of people who have resisted it for decades and centuries and who see that it might be coming to an end. We see the polling on, the young generations. They don't see the same kind of divides. They don't feel the same polarization. And I think that pressure is on perhaps the older generations where the split is harsher, the reaction is harsher. And that's what I think we're seeing now. That's what we're feeling. That group is feeling panic, and we're getting into far different things here, but I think it's worth discussing. And that's the last of it. They're fighting it. That last, they know if they give it up and they let logic and sanity and humanity prevail, that they'll lose because they're anti-humanity. But okay, that's enough of this. But I wanted to bring these two. Appreciate you. You just jumped on. I said, hey, you want to do something? And Dylan said, yeah, let's do it. So little Ohtani update, which I think is important. And I think OJ Simpson's death is just something to reflect on, something to discuss a little bit. All right, Dylan, thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you.